Direct realism. If you're a realist about something, then you believe that it exists independently of the mind. If you're an anti-realist about something, then you believe that the thing only exists in the mind, not out there in the world outside of your mind. A key question about perception is about how much of what we experience is a real feature of the external world and how much is just a feature created by our minds.
Direct realism claims that the world is as we perceive it to be. Objects have all the properties we perceive them to have, and they will continue to have these properties even if no one is around to perceive the object. We directly perceive objects, so there are just two components involved in perception: the perceiver and the object. The perceiver perceives the object exactly as it is.
For example, if I see a red strawberry on the table, that means there really is a strawberry on the table and it really is red. I directly perceive the properties of the strawberry. If I bite into the strawberry and it tastes sweet, the strawberry really has the property of being sweet. The strawberry will still be on the table and still be red and still be sweet, even if I leave the room. If someone else were to enter the room, they would see the same strawberry on the table and they too would experience it as being red and sweet.
Bernard Russell argued that there is an important distinction between appearance and reality. This is evidenced by the relativity of perception. For example, the appearance of the shape and colour of a table depends on what angle you happen to be looking at it and the lighting conditions. Two people in the same room will actually see the table in a different way, and yet we do want to say that they are looking at the same table. This shows that there is a difference between how the table appears and the table itself. Another example is railway tracks. Viewed from above, they look parallel, but when looking along the tracks from the ground, the lines appear to meet in the distance. We know they don't actually meet, so again, there is a distinction between appearance and reality.
Berkeley argued that objects do not actually have properties like colour and hotness. For example, the colour of clouds will change depending on how close you are when you are looking at them. Also, when you look at objects under a microscope, the colour of objects changes further, so there is no actual colour of objects.
Many other examples show that there is a distinction between the world of experience and the real world outside of our minds. For example, hallucinations show that sometimes we perceive entire objects that don't exist at all. Optical illusions, like seeing a stick as bent when placed in water, demonstrates that what is experienced, a bent stick, is not the same as reality, a straight stick. There are also time lags between our experience and the actual event. For example, you experience lightning before thunder, but actually they occur at the same time.
Some direct realists argue that they do know that their experiences give them accurate knowledge of the world, as other people agree about what they experience. It is not just me that sees the red strawberry, everyone sees the red strawberry. So there must be a strawberry that is red. Also, not all humans do experience the world in the same way, for example colourblind people.
Representative realism, sometimes called indirect realism, is an attempt to build a theory of perception that can deal with the problems raised against direct realism. Being a realist theory, representative realism claims that there are objects that exist independently of the mind, and they have some properties which are not dependent on the mind. However, representative realism claims that we perceive objects in the world only indirectly. Representative realism is a three-component model of perception that are perceivers, objects, and a middle component, sense data. We directly experience sense data, which represents the objects to us in our experience. Sense data are the experiences we are directly aware of which have been caused by the real objects in the world. The sense data itself is private, immaterial, and dependent on the mind for its existence. Many philosophers have supported this idea, such as John Locke and Bertrand Russell.
Representative realism makes a distinction between primary and secondary qualities. Primary qualities are those that objects have regardless whether they are being perceived, such as size, shape, number, and motion. Secondary qualities are those that only come about when the object is being experienced, like colour, hotness, smell, sound, and taste. Our experience of the secondary qualities of an object is caused by the primary qualities of the object. Our sense data gives us knowledge of the world to the degree that the sense data actually represents the world to us, i.e. to the degree that it accurately represents the primary qualities of objects.
Called direct realism. There is a more sophisticated version of direct realism called philosophical direct realism, PDR, which attempts to deal with the problems raised against naive direct realism. The alternatives to direct realism, representative realism and idealism, rely on claiming that the thing we directly experience is not the world but sense data. However, the very concept of sense data is deeply problematic. The main problem with it is what is called the reification argument. Sense data theories treat experience called sense data as an object, a thing in itself, when really it is just an activity of the mind. Sense data is not a thing we directly experience, it is experience. Treating sense data as an object we experience leads to absurdities.
The end.